But there's something bigger going on here. Fetterman's candidacy, like Joe Biden's candidacy 2 years ago, tells us something pretty dark about the Democratic Party. What it tells us is the Democratic Party has such contempt for voters and for democracy itself, and so much confidence in its ownership of the media and of big tech, that it no longer has to try to win your votes. Democrats can run Raphael Warnock, an aggressively anti-Christian, fake Christian pastor whose wife detailed abuse allegations against him on camera, and that's okay. It's still good enough for a Senate seat in Georgia because the machine keeps working. It's not about the person, it's about the party. It's not about the individual, it's about the group. And to prove it, they can even run mentally defective candidates who can barely speak and not only expect them to win, but expect you to accept the outcome no matter how transparently absurd it is. On November 9th, they'll be telling you that John Fetterman got 81 million votes in Pennsylvania, and they'll threaten to put you in jail if you don't believe it. Why wouldn't they do that? They work with Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think it's a form of power. You know, so often George Orwell was so prescient in what he predicted about how authoritarianism and tyranny would work. And in 1984, the novel we all read in high school, and his warning about how authoritarianism would happen, he described a tyrannical party, and he described as their final and most essential command that you are to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. If you can get a citizenry to do that, to trust what they're told more than what they're seeing and hearing on their own, that is a population that is put into extreme subservience. And I think on some level, the media almost likes being this brazen in their lives. Remember when we all witnessed Joe Biden, who we've seen in public life for 50 years, so obviously suffering cognitive decline, they decided to tell us it wasn't really cognitive decline, that he had a stutter that was never there before. Half the time he doesn't know where he is. Half the time he falls asleep in interviews now. And if you raise any of these things, we're told you're a big people who stutter.
This March, the site published a piece with the headline, "The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine." The article was funny because it pointed out that Rachel Levine is himself pretty funny. Here you have a man dressed up like a woman in makeup and purple glasses, wearing some kind of admiral's uniform, pretending to be the Assistant Secretary of Health when he looks like a candidate for an imminent heart attack himself. So the whole outfit is a riot. It's like a Halloween costume some clever drunk college student dreamed up. This year I'm going as an obese transvestite health admiral. You'd laugh if you saw him at a party. But the Biden administration can't allow you to laugh at Rachel Levine or at Karine Jean-Pierre or Kamala Harris or any of the other transparently absurd figures that pretending are running our country. Or for that matter, at Biden himself, who somehow they tell you got, quote, 81 million votes despite being senile and rarely going outside. So what they're really arguing is, in the wake of this attack, which is awful against someone who did not deserve it, and we want to be clear about that. Paul Pelosi really is a nice guy. Hard to believe, but he is. But in the wake of that, they're telling you, unfortunately, you can no longer have free speech. Well, you can't. They're telling you this is an example of stochastic terrorism, which is a completely meaningless phrase that emerged like a virus out of the university to infect our public discourse, or more precisely, to suppress our public discourse. Reuters has reported that, we're quoting, terrorism and extremism experts believe it could be an example of the growing threat of so-called stochastic terrorism, in which sometimes unstable individuals are inspired to violence by hate speech. Okay. What is hate speech, by the way? All of a sudden, everyone in the media has, sort of without explaining why, agreed that there's this thing called hate speech that's real and probably actionable. They can find $1 billion judgment against you if you commit hate speech. But just to remind everyone watching, there's no such thing as hate speech. Hate speech is speech people hate, usually the people in power. The truth is, all speech, except speech that encourages people to imminent illegal action, like go shoot that guy. Short of that, there's no hate speech. All of it's allowed under the United States Constitution, which is our final hope. But what they're telling you is that dissenting in any way from the editorial positions of, say, the Washington Post or the Daily Beast or the Atlantic Magazine, disagreeing with those publications and the consensus they represent isn't simply immoral. No, it's worse than that. It's violence. It gets people killed. That's the stochastic terrorism. When you question, say, COVID protocols or drag queen story hour or the war against Russia, you are effectively smashing an 82-year-old man in the head with a hammer. They're making that argument. And of course, they have no choice but to make that argument. Democrats are very worried about the coming elections, But they're absolutely terrified that Elon Musk may allow people to criticize them on Twitter. And they know what Republicans don't seem to know, which is without censorship, the Democratic Party cannot continue to hold power. Democrats understand that. They have nothing to offer. They have to stop you from asking questions. So they have to crush Elon Musk, not because he's a right winger, but because he will allow their opponents to speak. And of course, they are using the attack on poor Paul Pelosi to do just that. The New York Times has just come out with a piece that says, and we're quoting, Elon Musk in a tweet shares a link from a site known to publish fake news. Really? What did Elon Musk do? Well, he linked to an article about how Paul Pelosi called the guy in his home a friend. Well, that's what the 911 tape says. You can draw your own conclusions or not, or maybe you don't care, which is also fine. How is that fake? It seems to be real. NBC News' Ben Collins explained that Musk's tweets are, quote, how you lose a democracy in the age of the internet. Oh, by asking questions. Jimmy Kimmel attacked Musk personally. Used to be a comic. Sad to watch that decline. It's been interesting, Kimmel wrote to Musk, to watch you blossom from the electric car guy into a fully formed piece of human excrement. Then CNN told its viewers today that in the wake of the attack on Paul Pelosi, Elon Musk can no longer let people speak freely on Twitter. That was his plan, but no more. In the wake of the attack on Pelosi, Musk must retain, quote, what the far right calls censorship. Oh, the far right. But you don't need to be far right to identify it as censorship, because censorship is exactly what it is. And to restate, Democrats could no longer exist or hold power without it. They need censorship. And they're going to try to use this horrifying crime to hold on to it. This is too stupid. This is a lie. Voters know it's a lie. And when Democrats get crushed in next week's midterms, it'll be in part because people who live in cities and states run by liberals understand that what happened to Paul Pelosi could very well happen to them. And no one would care. Morning Joe would pretend it never happened.